Welcome to the Fitness Simplified podcast. I'm Brooke Davis, women's functional nutritionist and fitness specialist with Elysian Women's Wellness, and I'm here to simplify your fitness. In today's episode, we're going to chat about a topic that's super relevant and important for anyone looking to rebuild their relationship with food, and that is intuitive eating versus educated eating. You've probably heard about intuitive eating, this idea of just listening to your body, eating when you're hungry, and just knowing what you need. And it all sounds great, right? But here's the thing. In today's world, our natural cues around food have been so disrupted by things like hyperpalatable foods, stress, poor sleep, and a lot of other lifestyle factors that it's not always just as easy as listening to your body. That's why in this episode, we're going to talk about why educated eating, which is all about understanding how your body actually responds to food, how to nourish it properly based on science, not feeling, needs to come first. It's the foundation that allows you to actually regulate your hunger and fullness hormones in order to rebuild trust with your body's natural cues. Only then, after some time and practice, can you actually start to rely on this newly created intuition around food. So, whether you're struggling to listen to your hunger signals or you're just looking to get more intentional with how you nourish your body, this episode is going to give you some practical tips to reset your eating habits and find a sustainable way to look and feel your best. So, let's go. I want to start by talking about the major ways that our natural instincts around food have been completely disrupted. In today's world, it's not just about what we eat, it's also about how, when, and why we eat, and how all of that has been really influenced by a lot of different external factors over time. There's, of course, number one and the biggest culprits in disrupting our food instincts is the food industry itself. Big agriculture, food corporations, they've all played a huge role in pushing processed, highly, hyper palatable foods into our day-to-day diets. So many of these foods are actually engineered to trigger our pleasure centers in the brain, making them really hard to resist. They have actually figured out the perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat to make them what's called hyperpalatable, which causes a dopamine release when you eat them, which then leads to cravings, it leads to overeating if you're not really careful and intentional about portion sizes when you eat those things. Over time, our natural hunger and fullness cues get disrupted by these constant high-powered food signals, making it really hard to listen to our own bodies and eat in a balanced, nourishing way. Then, of course, there is number two, which is the, I think, second most impactful aspect of disrupted eating, and that is stress. Whether that is from work or family or everyday life, it all disrupts our natural hunger signals. So when we're stressed, we release cortisol, which can interfere with both appetite and satiety hormones like ghrelin and leptin. This can lead to extra cravings, overeating, sometimes loss of appetite, and then I think women are most familiar with emotional eating, so reaching for food to cope with stress or emotions. And this can become a really common response, which pushes you even further from your natural cues. And then we just have the normal busyness of modern day-to-day life, packed schedules, constant multitasking. This leads to eating mindlessly on the most convenient foods we can find, which are usually processed. And these then make it harder to listen to our bodies in the moment. And number three, which kind of goes along with stress, it's a form of stress, but this is disruption in your circadian rhythm. So our bodies operate on this internal clock called the circadian rhythm, and it helps us regulate not just our sleep and wake cycles, but also our metabolism and appetite. Unfortunately, modern life has really thrown this rhythm out of whack for most people. So poor sleep habits, late night screen time, blue light exposure from phones and computers all mess with our natural sleep patterns. When we don't get enough sleep or we expose ourselves to too much of that artificial light at night, it can really impact our hormone levels. It can lead to late night cravings, imbalanced blood sugar, overeating the next day. When our circadian rhythms are disrupted, it becomes a lot harder to trust our body's natural hunger signals. So, a recent meta analysis, which is a study of a lot of different studies, showed that on average, experimental sleep deprivation increased caloric consumption by 385 calories per day. Clearly, their intuition was off. So, definitely something to keep in mind in terms of impacting your cravings and eating habits. Number 4 is something that we don't think about a lot of times, and that is our societal or cultural conditioning. This could look like your mom telling you to clean your plate before you can leave the table, or to never waste food because the starving kids in Africa. It could be your grandpa telling you to just have some more or finish off the pot just because he wanted you to feel loved and fed. That was my grandpa. And, I'm sure they meant no harm, but especially for kids who actually do still have their intuition intact, as long as they're fed whole, unprocessed foods, these kinds of impacts and conditioning can actually be quite damaging to, again, their relationship with food and their eating habits. I work with women all the time who still feel guilty for not cleaning their plate, even if they realize they're not hungry. I know so many moms who hate to throw away the last few bites of their kids' sandwich just because it's not worth saving, but it's still a waste to throw it away. And then, culturally speaking, of course, we have every single holiday centered around some sort of food or drink. New Year's is, of course, alcohol. Valentine's Day, we have chocolate. There's Easter candy. There is summer birthday cake. There's 4th of July barbecues. There's Halloween candy, Thanksgiving pie, Christmas, all the things. And rinse, repeat. It literally never ends. So when we try to rely on this intuitive eating in this environment where our food is literally engineered to be irresistible, our stress levels are off the charts, our sleep patterns are completely thrown off, and we have this constant bombardment of pressure from family and holidays, it becomes a lot harder than it sounds. Our natural instincts around food are not functioning in the way they were designed to. Intuitive eating asks us to listen to cues like hunger and fullness, but when those signals are out of sync due to everything we just talked about, you can't trust them. And so this is why simply trying to eat intuitively without first rebuilding a foundation of educated eating can leave a lot of people just feeling really lost, not seeing or feeling the results they want, and potentially doing harm. Before you can truly trust your body, you need to take the time to relearn what real hunger and satisfaction feels like, what our bodies actually need, and then the best way to navigate that in the real world. So, understanding the connection between what we eat and how we feel can be a game changer when it comes to making healthier choices. Most people I talk to who have never educated themselves on nutrition are under eating. They're eating too little protein and they're eating too many fats and carbs. So, educated eating helps you reconnect with your body's cues by teaching you how different foods affect you physically and mentally. Once you start to understand how what you eat impacts your energy, your mood, your overall well being, your recovery, you really can make better, intuitive, but educated decisions around food. For example, you might notice that certain foods like sugary snacks leave you feeling sluggish or bloated afterward, or going back and reaching for more, which is that blood sugar response. While if you're eating things like protein and veggies or fruits and whole grains for carbohydrates, you're going to find that you're keeping that sustained energy throughout the day. You're recovering better from your workouts. You're less sore. You're able to sleep better sometimes. And that's going to give you a much better understanding of your body's needs. And then you can choose that to support your long-term health. Educated eating is really just learning how to nourish your body sustainably, not with quick fixes or restrictive random diets. So, how do you actually go about educating yourself on eating Nutrition. Well, you're in the right place. It's not as overwhelming as it may sound. And really, it starts with a basic understanding of the building blocks of nutrition, which are macros, macronutrients, and micronutrients. So, macronutrients are the big kind of categories of food, that is protein, fats, and carbs. So, every food fits into one or more of those categories. And all of them obviously play a different role in supporting your metabolism, balancing hormones, working on your immune system, plays a role in your digestion. And then, of course, we have micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. So these are things like your immune support, your energy production, mood regulation, and ultimately, you need a balance of both. You cannot just prioritize one and have optimal overall health. So once you have a basic understanding of those concepts, then you can start to pay attention to how your body responds to different foods and which categories they're in. So, a great place to start is just learning how to read food labels, knowing how to identify what's in your food. Again, macronutrient, micronutrient wise, this can actually help you make more informed decisions about what you're eating. Over time, you'll start to notice certain patterns, like foods that make you feel great, usually the whole unprocessed ones, while others don't leave you feeling so great. And sometimes even finding things that you are sensitive to or things like that that cause bloating, even if they are whole and unprocessed, can be game changing in how you feel over the long term. One of the most powerful tools you can use is some sort of food tracking, even a food and mood journal, something like that. You can just write it down, on a piece of paper. You can do it in your phone, notes app, whatever. We have a food tracker built into our custom app, which is what most of our clients use. But there are free ones like MyFitnessPal. Just don't follow the macro protein recommendations from them. They're terrible. Make sure you get them from us. Or there are lower priced ones like Chronometer. They're a little bit better, more efficient, that are like $5 a year or something. Or like I said, you can literally just start by writing down what you ate in your notes app along with how you felt afterwards, tracking how specific foods make you feel physically, mentally, and then you can experiment with really what works for your body. Maybe you feel super energized after your balanced breakfast of eggs, avocado, and a piece of fruit, but find that you hit that mid-afternoon crash if you start with a bowl of cereal. So understanding these things and really seeing it on paper can be a really great start in understanding what your body needs and how to make those adjustments. There are also more simple ways to track that aren't quite as informative, but using things like food lists to choose from with hand portion sizing or plate portions. I actually go pretty deep in into this in one of my first podcasts on macros. So I am going to direct you there. I will link it in the show notes. But just to say, there are a lot of different options when it comes to navigating your educated eating. You can, of course, also weigh your food to really learn what a portion size looks like. I'll tell you, there is nothing more depressing than learning what a real serving of peanut butter looks like. And I promise you, you have never eaten so little peanut butter at one time. So weighing your food can be very, very eye-opening. Educated eating, though, doesn't mean you have to follow a strict diet, a plan, or obsess over every meal, but it's about taking the time to just understand what your body needs, learning what foods help fuel it in the right way, and then practicing mindful eating based on that knowledge. Over time, this is going to give you a much clearer picture of how to nourish yourself in a sustainable long-term way. And most people are here because they're looking for hormonal health or body composition change, and establishing those healthy eating habits along with making those changes of what your body needs are also going to help you get there without it being so stressful of figuring out which diet you have to follow. So part of this learning process is working on balancing your meals with balanced macronutrient ratios, things like that. And probably most importantly is eating mindfully. And that is eating slowly, enabling you to actually listen to your hunger and fullness cues. So it takes 20 minutes for your stomach to tell your brain it's full. So if you've finished your meal before 20 minutes is up, you might already be over full. If you start out with your balanced meal of proteins, fats, and carbs, you're chewing 20 times per bite. The recommendation is actually 30, which is a lot, or putting your fork down in between bites. That is all going to help you slow yourself down, and you're going to have the awareness before you are full. And that is when you want to stop eating, ideally when you're about 80% full. You're going to start to recognize that you've had enough food. You can put it away for tomorrow, box it up if you're out at a restaurant, or simply just throw it away because unfortunately the starving kids in Africa are not coming to get your meal. These habits are going to allow you to create healthier eating patterns and over time completely restore your body's intuition. This is not an overnight process. Most of our clients work with us anywhere between 9 to 18 months, and it takes this entire time for a lot of them to make this transition from learning about nutrition, learning what their body needs, learning to be able to actually execute it, and then be able to listen to it while it kind of adjusts back to baseline. Now, I understand you're busy, ain't nobody got time for all that, but the reality of it is that you either make time to be healthy or your body will make you make time by being sick. Change is not easy, but I promise you it's worth it. And for most people, it starts with your relationship to food. That is something that we cannot get away from, and it has to be something we learn to navigate. There are, of course, also ways to save you time. And the first and easiest is to hire a coach. When you hire a coach, you're not just paying for knowledge, you're paying for saved time and experience. Another thing you're paying for with a coach is not having to sort through Dr. Google and figure out which information is legit and what's not, right? We have textbooks, we have science-backed research. There is so much information and misinformation out there that can be really difficult to discern. We, of course, navigate that for you. Otherwise, you can find some really great reputable books. I would be happy to point you in the right direction if you want to start reading yourself and doing some research yourself. We also do personalized nutrition plans for free. So find me on any socials, shoot me a message, shoot me an email. It's all linked in the show notes if you want to get that done. And then stress management. Stress management and time management is probably one of the biggest hurdles that people need to work through. A lot of stress in people's lives comes from poor time management, but there are only so many hours in a day. So making sure that what you're learning is factual, applicable to you, and the most effective is obviously key. But you're here, so you're on a really good track. Stress management specifically is also another huge key in reducing overeating and emotional eating. That's really for a whole other podcast. And I actually recently did a live training in our free community on emotional eating and some ways you can navigate that. But if you can prioritize stress management, you're going to be off to a good start. So some ways to do that include exercise, of course, breath work, spending time in nature, even spending short amounts of time of doing things that bring you joy. Like I try and practice the piano like 10 minutes twice a week. I love my guitar too, but I'm also trying to play piano. So either one of the two, I'll try and do something like that. I do kickboxing. So, once or twice a week, I make sure I get out and do that. And those are all things that genuinely bring me joy. And of course, I'm outside all the time. So those are really important to stress management and navigating that component of your relationship to food. And then we have consistency. And this is most people's biggest problem, but it comes from other issues. They can overhaul their entire life in 1 week, but it only lasts for 2. So while you might get faster results that way, they usually don't last. My suggestion would be to take on one small change at a time that feels very doable, maybe even too easy, but can you be consistent with it? Then, once you've mastered that, add on. So, for example, if you're looking to change your diet, maybe you just start with incorporating more protein at breakfast. How many different meals can you come up with that you enjoy so you don't get bored, of course, because everybody gets bored of their healthy breakfast, but not the meals that aren't serving them. So, how many ways can you get 30 to 40 grams of protein at breakfast? And what about if you don't have time to prep? What if you're on the go? Check all of those boxes. Then start looking at all of your other meals. The transition now out of educated eating and tracking of some kind can really look different for everyone. For some who are okay to eat the same meals all week, maybe they track and prep once at the beginning of the week and that's it. Maybe they're able to start switching out snacks because they already know where those snacks fit. It depends on, where you're at education level in your foods, which should be good if you're switching over to intuitive eating. But then if you're somebody who wants to eat something different every day, maybe you start with just one meal. Maybe you track each meal up to dinner, see what you have left, and then throw something together without tracking it based on what you now know about a balanced meal, portion sizes, and then what you have left at the end of the day, macronutrient-wise, micronutrient-wise. And then maybe from there, you move on to not tracking entire days. But of course, the concept is that you're eating similar meals as you were when you were on track, right? Tracking, doing your educated eating, and similar foods, because you didn't do this eating things that you don't normally eat. You didn't cut out any foods you enjoy, because then you won't be able to introduce them back in without knowing how they impact your goals, which is another main problem with restrictive or fad diets like keto, Atkins, Optavia, or really various challenges that don't let you have sugar or bread. If you don't also learn how to navigate life with them, right? What do you do when you get off them? Or what do you do when the holidays come around and you want to have some of grandma's pie, but you don't want to snowball? How do you adjust around those things? That is what educated eating teaches you before your intuition has a chance. We call it a health journey for a reason. Despite having goals along the way, there's really no end. Life is always changing, our bodies are always changing, and maybe your goals are changing too. And in that, different seasons may call for different things. But if you have an educational base to fall back on, it's always something that will serve you. And in my opinion, something that everyone needs in order to be truly healthy. If you can fall in love with a process along the way, that's a bonus. And when it's done right, I honestly don't think it's that hard to do. If you need more support starting your educated eating journey, I will link our free personalized diet plan below to get you started. If you have any questions, suggestions for future topics, or just want to chat, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Brooke_Elysian and Facebook linked in the show notes, or via our website, ElysianWomen'sWellness.com. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, we'd be thrilled if you could take a half second to leave us a 5-star review. Not only will you be helping others find our show, but you'll also be entered into our monthly $100 giveaway for no reviews. New episodes drop every Monday, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. Thanks for listening. See you soon.